The feed cut. The night warden still said nothing. Vosk's breath caught. "Recall the forward ships," he muttered. "What?" I said, "pull them back." It was already too late. The night warden's comms finally opened. Ilara's voice, low and calm, came through every ship's speaker. "We will not fire first. We do not need to. If you want to leave orbit intact, start now. No threats. Just inevitability." The timer hit 0000. Every railgun clicked in unison. Not fired, just armed. The sound alone echoed across the sky like the gods breathing in. And then, the Xerian fleet began to move, not forward, away. The skies cleared at 001. No fire, no battle, just the slow, humiliating retreat of the most feared armada in the quadrant. The Gravex Ulm was the last to turn, and even then its engines took longer to light, like it had to swallow pride before admitting fear. From the night warden's observation deck, Ilara watched it all. She didn't smile, didn't speak, just turned away. "Send the signal." Roke tapped the console. "To who?" "Everyone." AVD spike. Alien systems light up. Across 17 sectors, comboys blinked to life. "Human" code. Universal formatting. A single message beamed through every trade hub, pirate relay, council archive, and border station. "Earth has re-entered the galactic stage. We do not seek conflict. We will not tolerate cruelty. We do not need approval." Back on the ground, humanitarian teams expanded. Human engineers linked power lines to broken schools. Valen doctors were flown into mobile operating pods equipped with Earth nanite chambers. Children were vaccinated with human tech some council races didn't even possess. "They're rebuilding faster than we predicted," a council analyst muttered. "No," Rail corrected. "They're replacing us." AVD beat. Political breakdown. On a distant moon, a minor species, the Lithari, deactivated their defense pact with the council. A day later, they signed one with Earth. On the edge of disputed territory, 3 neutral worlds declared Earth-safe landing zones. Human supply ships, once laughed at, now moved with impunity. Their flag was still absent, but their shadow loomed large. Ilara met with the Valen ambassador beneath the hollowed arch of a bombed cathedral. "You didn't have to come," the Valen said softly. "I did," Ilara replied. "You asked for help." And the council didn't listen. No, they never do. A pause. "Why are you really here?" Ilara looked skyward, not at stars, at memory, because we were forgotten once, and we swore no one else would be. Back. On the night warden, Roke sat quietly with a datapad. He tapped through news updates. Mentions of Earth had gone from whispers to headlines. They never threatened us. They just arrived. They're not diplomats. They're a verdict. Ilara's voice echoed faintly from behind. "We never asked permission, and we never will." The grand hall was standing room only, not for ceremony, for survival. Dozens of species packed the chamber, claws tapping, wings fidgeting, tentacles coiled in tension. For the first time in centuries, no one cared about protocol. The room reeked of fear. The high speaker stood. "Our sovereignty has been undermined," he said. "Earth's intervention violates it. They intervened because we didn't." Rail cut in. Murmurs rippled. The speaker flared in rage. "This is not a discussion." "It never was," Rail replied coolly. "That's the problem. AVD, Spike, Counselor makes mistake." Counselor Brev stood next. The same smug voice from Chapter 1. But now with something else behind it. Desperation. "We propose sanctions on Earth. Blockade. Tech suppression. Unified force response." He looked around for nods, got none, so he said it. "They need to learn their place." AVD pause. A silence fell so sharp it drew blood. A slow flicker on the central screen interrupted. A real-time orbital feed. Another ship had arrived. Bigger than the Night Warden. Longer. Heavier. Its designation was clear in bold white lettering. ENS. Vindicator. The chamber gasped. Rail spoke soft as a scalpel. That is Earth's second wave. The high speaker staggered back. They brought another dreadnought? No, Rail replied. They brought an idea. And we've lost the argument. Cut to space. The Vindicator did not park politely. It entered orbit in a maneuver that rattled tectonic sensors. It wanted to be seen and heard. No weapons fired, but its presence was a weapon in itself. On the bridge, Admiral Saren, older than Alara, colder too, activated a system-wide ping. To the Galactic Council. We acknowledge your summit. We reject your authority. You do not speak for those who suffer. Cut to alien news feeds, streaming now in every major system. Earth doubles its presence in Valen airspace. UNS Vindicator enters orbit without resistance. Blockade collapses. Council splinters. AVD emotional beat. Back to Brev. Stunned. They can't just ignore us. They're not ignoring you, Rail said quietly. They've replaced you. Across dozens of council monitors, the final transmission from Earth read, "We are not your enemy, but we will never again be your subject." The Galactic Council's databanks showed a sharp decline, not in power output, in relevance. One by one, border worlds withdrew. Emergency alliances crumbled. Trade routes realigned. The word council became a footnote. The new phrase on every transmission? Earth Standard Protocols accepted. AVD spike, psychological collapse. Brevi sat alone in his quarters, eyes glazed. The voice that once echoed through debates now mumbled to walls. They were backward. They were crude. They had rockets. His aide entered, pale with panic. Sir. Another system defected. The Seraph. Brev didn't look up. They hosted our founding charter. They broadcast it, the aide added. Then burned it. Cut to Valen surface. New generators light up entire city blocks. The Night Warden crew doesn't celebrate. They just keep working. One Valen girl paints a symbol on the wall. Not a flag. Not Earth's seal. Just a hand, open, holding. A sun. Back in orbit, the Vindicator releases drones. Not armed, but surveyors. Mapping, planning, not for conquest but rescue. Then, the signal, untraceable. Old tech, dirty code, smuggled through a forgotten relay station. A council hardliner, rogue, sends a message to a mercenary fleet. Attack the Night Warden. Make it look like pirates. Humanity must bleed, or we all fade. AVD beat. Enemy mistake. The fleet enters Valen space 6 hours later. No banners, just weapon heat signatures and pirate transponders. Inside the Night Warden, alarms light up. Roke leans forward. They think we'll hesitate. Ilara. Stands cold, we won't. The air shifts. Command decks across human ships flare to life. Dozens of protocols activate. Silent. Automatic. Ancient. Not retaliation. Execution. UNSC response. Protocol. Thunderclap. Not a shot is fired. Not yet. Instead, Earth's vessels vanish from sensors. They don't cloak. They disappear. The mercenary fleet freezes. Then one ship erupts. No warning, no projectile. Just a bloom of light and gravity folding. Another follows, and another. Invisible strikes. Clean, precise, surgical, terrifying. Back in council space, intercepted footage loops silently. Ships dying without sound, without trace. And one message. From the Vindicator. Thunder doesn't always roar, sometimes it just erases. AVD emotional hook. Valen survivor voiceover plays on open networks. They didn't ask who started it, they just ended it. The skies over Vela opened, not with fire, not with fury, with rain. Clean, cool, chemical-balanced rain, seeded, from orbit by Earth's automated weather platforms. The ash was washed from the streets. The blood, too. And with it, the illusion that the galaxy's power rested anywhere but in humanity's hands. Children danced, elders wept, and overhead, 2 human dreadnoughts watched, silent, unmoving, like monuments or warnings. On the night warden, Ilara stood alone in the hangar, armor stripped, hair damp. She looked human again, exhausted, resolute. Roke approached, data pad in hand. Last of the Valens are secure, he said. Repairs ahead of schedule, no resistance, no more threats. She nodded. You ready to leave? He asked. She shook her head once. I want them to remember the silence. Cut to council chamber, now barely occupied. Rael sat in the shadows of the once great hall, listening to the echoes of arguments no one dared voice anymore. A single message blinked on her console, from Earth Diplomatic Node 01. There will be no empire. No capital, no crown, just presence. And the promise, if you abandon them again, we won't ask twice. She read it twice, then 3 times. She smiled, not in joy, in understanding. They don't need to lead, she whispered. They just need to exist. AVD spike, galaxy-wide montage. In distant systems, warlords canceled campaigns. On fringe planets, children asked if they'd be protected like the Valens. Pirate networks went dark, and in one council archive, an anonymous hand updated a galactic database entry. Earth, status, unknown. Observed behavior, calculated mercy, recommended response, do not test, again cut back to orbit, the Night Warden and Vindicator drift together, blocking the sunlight for a brief symbolic moment. Ilara's voice echoes over the final wideband transmission. This was never about revenge. This wasn't even about justice. This was about what happens when you think no one's coming, and then humanity strikes. Like thunder, the transmission ends. The ships vanish, and above a world once abandoned, it rained. Silence fell. The meaning was clear. Back on the planet, Ilara stared at the darkened skyline. She spoke into her comm, to the ship, to her crew, maybe to the stars. No flags, no mercy, just presence. She walked forward, and the world began. To follow. Order, snapped High Speaker Velthor, pounding the council floor with his crystalline gavel. Order! It didn't work. The Grand Hall of Concord was fracturing, literally. One of the upper balconies had cracked from the force of a tremor, caused not by tectonic shifts, but by human atmospheric pressure. Screens flickered. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over one another. They landed without authorization. They bypassed orbital defense systems like they were paper. They're helping civilians without diplomatic clearance. At the center, Rayleigh of the Drenari remained seated, composed, and quietly watching the Empire collapse in real time. AVD spike. A counselor loses composure. Counselor Urian of the Kailari slammed his multiple fists against the console. This isn't intervention. It's psychological warfare. They're not just lifting the Valens. They're making us look obsolete. Across the chamber, a representative of the Murian Accord hissed back, "Maybe we are." Silence. A dangerous one. Ambassador Rael stood slowly. "I warned you," she said, voice calm and low. "You thought they would beg. They didn't. You thought they would plead. They landed." Brev, still nursing bruised pride from earlier, snarled. "They're death worlders, but they still bleed. We can push back." "You won't," Rael said. Brev scoffed. "You think I'm afraid?" "No," she answered. "But you should be ashamed." Every eye turned. Their silence was mercy, she continued. Their patience was restraint. And now that restraint is gone. The humans are here. Not as diplomats, not as soldiers. As reminders. AVD beat. Hard switch to human POV. Inside the Valen capital, Ilara stood among the ruins of a shattered hospital. Her boots crunched on broken tiles. A Valen medic limped forward. We didn't think anyone would come," he said. Ilara didn't smile. She just handed him a small container of field nanite packs. "You were wrong," she replied, "but not forgotten. In orbit, New signals flared. More human vessels entering the system. Stealth models, carriers, hospital ships. None announced their presence. The Council intercepted one brief transmission. Second wave inbound. Do not engage. Observe. Learn. Adjust. Back in the chamber, panic climbed to a fever pitch. What is the endgame here? Someone shouted. Rail answered, without hesitation, you're looking at it. The gavel dropped again. This time it didn't call for orders. It sounded like surrender. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Acidic streaks hissed against armored plating and soaked into cratered ground. But still, they built. Not forward. Bases, not bunkers. Hospitals. Water lines. Field kitchens. Shielded shelters with modular solar rigs. Every move made by the Night Warden's crew was methodical, brutal in its efficiency. To the Valen survivors, it was unreal. To the Xerians, it was unnerving. To the Council, it was unforgivable. They're laying cable, Roke grunted, watching human engineers drive power conduits into the broken city's spine. They're rebuilding faster than most species can retreat, Alara murmured beside him. AVD Spike. Alien Recon Team, POV. A Xerian scout drone hovered just beyond, the perimeter cloaked, observing. One human, a mechanic named Jess, sat beneath a makeshift canopy, welding power nodes by hand. Her fingers were black with carbon. Her breath was visible in the cold. Then she looked up, straight into the drone's lens. You're watching, she said, not alarmed. Good. Watch closely. She stood and deliberately tapped the side of her headset. A blinding EMP pulse flared. The drone dropped like a stone. Back on their frigate, the Xerian recon officer stood speechless. They're not just fixing, he whispered. They're taunting. Cut to Council chamber. Panic turns to plotting. They're setting up permanent infrastructure, Urian roared. We must declare this an act of colonization. Rail spoke without looking up from her display. They haven't planted a flag. They haven't claimed territory. They've offered food, water, protection. If that's colonization, what were we doing here? The silence that followed was venomous. Back on the ground, Valen children gathered around a newly installed purifier. One girl, no older than 10, reached up and touched the side of a human soldier's gauntlet. He didn't pull away. He knelt, removed his glove, and handed her a ration cube. Not much, he said, voice low. But it's warm. Cut to Alara, watching it all. Recording every interaction, every frightened smile turned to cautious hope. Roke asked, Why are we documenting all of this? Alara answered plainly, Because they'll try to rewrite this later, and we'll already have the truth. Another message flared across Council intercepts. Phase 1 complete. Stabilization achieved. No resistance detected. Proceeding to the next vector. What's the next vector? A panicked aide asked. Rail leaned back, eyes heavy with implication. Whatever they want it to be. The Xerian flagship Gravex Ulm entered Valen orbit with a silence that was anything but peaceful. 10 kilometers long. Razor-shaped. The pride of the Xerian Imperial Armada. Its arrival wasn't diplomatic. It was a threat. A broadcast followed. Within minutes, beamed across every frequency, encrypted and unencrypted, translated for all. To the human vessel, UNS Night Warden. Your unauthorized presence constitutes a violation of interstellar conflict protocols. Withdraw within 36 hours, or be removed by force. It was signed by High Commander Dreth Vosk himself. Back on the ground, Alara read the message once, then slid it aside like a bad weather report. Roke glanced at her. They brought the Gravex? Yup. And the deadline? 36 hours, Alara replied. We'll be done by 12. She stood, walked to the command table, tapped once on the console. A timer appeared. 11:59:59. Begin operation. Sundown. AVD spike. Council POV cracks again. They threatened the Xerians? One counselor gasped. They ignored the Xerians. Rail corrected. her voice more tired than triumphant. "They're going to be annihilated." "No," Rail said. "They're going to finish something." Cut to orbit. Xerian fleet begins amassing around Gravex Ulm. Dozens of support craft, dreadnoughts, electronic warfare arrays priming. Weapons locked on the Night Warden. Human sensors lit up like a firestorm. And still, no response. Inside the Night Warden, engineers were offloading final supplies. Pilots double-checked the evac corridors. Medtechs completed Valen population assessments. It wasn't defense, it was an execution. Alara stood on the observation deck. The enemy ships were visible with the naked eye now, clawed silhouettes against the distant red clouds. "Should we warn the Valens?" Roke asked. "They already know," Ilara said. In the city, Valen citizens moved silently into secured shelters. No fear, just trust, the kind only earned through action. Ilara keyed her mic. "To all human units, hold fire, hold formation, let them blink first. AVD beat. Syrian bridge." Commander Vosk watched the countdown tick. 30 minutes left. He snarled, punched the console. "Why haven't they responded?" A junior officer spoke, trembling. "Sir, they're not responding. They're preparing." On the Night Warden, the forward hangars opened, not to launch fighters, to let the sun hit polished steel. Rows of unmanned rail cannons slid into place. Quiet, locked, terrifying in their stillness. Roke looked at them. "They're not aiming. Yet. They don't have to," Ilara said, because the Xerians knew exactly what would happen. No one spoke. The Xerian armada floated above Valen skies like a storm waiting to fall. Cannons primed. Engines burning blue. And yet, the Night Warden didn't even blink. No shields raised. No evasive protocols activated. Its weapons hung idle, not because they were dormant, but because they didn't need to be shown. On the bridge of the Gravex Ulm, High Commander Vosk paced in tight circles. "Why don't they posture?" he barked. "Why don't they warn us?" No one answered. Back on the Night Warden, Ilara stood motionless, eyes on the central chrono. Every member of her crew was in place, calm, no speeches, no panic, just a practiced quiet that felt less like discipline and more like faith. 12 minutes, she whispered. Roke glanced at her. "Until what?" She smiled. "Just barely. Until they realize we're not bluffing." AVD spike. Council chamber POV. A hologram of the countdown hovered above the Grand Hall. Only 10 minutes remained. Debate had devolved into shouts, then into silence. Eyes watched the timer. Breath held. No one interrupted. Finally, one alien whispered, "If the Xerians fire first." "They won't," Rail said. "How do you know?" She didn't blink. "Because they don't want to die." Cut to Syrian command. Commander Vosk's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. "Send another message," he growled. "One more warning." The comms officer hesitated. "Sir, we already sent 8. The timer hit Wiro 04. In orbit, a Valon civilian satellite pinged both fleets. Then, without prompt, without clearance, it played a broadcast. Video feed. Human footage. It showed a planet burned. A battlefield scorched black. Charred Xerian hulls melted into dirt. The Battle of Virex Fauners. A human voiceover played. "This was what we did after negotiations." There was laughter in the chamber. Not the kind born of joy, the kind that dripped with condescension. "They still use combustion engines," chuckled Counselor Brev of the Irani. His silver tendrils shook with amusement as he gestured to the flickering holoscreen. "They call them rockets." How quaint. A few murmurs of agreement followed. The Kaelari ambassador polished one of his glimmering horns and added, "And they expect us to intervene? Let the Valen starve. They chose to ally with primitives." The Valen envoy stood silent in the center, spine bowed, throat sacs dimming. Her people were dying, cut off, quarantined by the Xerian blockade. The council had voted against action. Again, Earth offered help, she finally whispered, voice fragile. We begged. Only they responded. A pause. Then more laughter. They offered? Brev's voice curled in mockery. What could they possibly send? Wooden ships? Harsh language? A vibration cut through the room, subtle, low. Then another, like footsteps in a cathedral. Counselor Brev paused mid-scoff. His eyes twitched toward the ceiling as dust trickled from the ancient archbeams. No scheduled landings today, muttered Kailari. His tone had shifted. Another tremor. This one is deeper. Rhythmic. Growing. The banners of 1,000 worlds lining the chamber walls rippled, without wind. Then the lights dimmed. A voice crackled through the chamber's ancient comms. A voice that wasn't routed through any council. System. Incoming vessel approaching forbidden orbit. Identification. Human signature. Supermass scale. No translation required. Silence. The Vylan ambassador raised her head. She said they offered. Whispered someone behind Brev. She didn't say what. The skies over the council citadel turned red. Not fire, thruster flare. The kind that boiled the atmosphere. Dozens stood now, their faces pressed to the towering viewport. The orbital sensors were malfunctioning. The static wasn't just in the comms. It buzzed in their teeth. Then they saw it. A shadow, blocking. The sun. No sleek elegance, no alien curvature, just brutal, jagged steel. 1,000 gunmetal slabs riveted into shape. Not grown, not smoothed, forged. Its engines looked like furnaces from mythology. Its turrets rotated slowly like a predator sniffing prey. It has no shields, the Kailari whispered, stunned. It doesn't need shields, replied the Valen. Another voice, this one human. Course unfiltered, cut in. Transmission to all council members, this is UN's Night Warden. We are here for the Valens. Stand down. Brev's mouth opened. No sound came out. And then, as if cued by fate, a final sentence echoed. One they would remember for centuries. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. You knew, hissed Counselor Oros of the Silthari, his gossamer robes shimmering as he spun toward her. You knew they had that. Ambassador Rael of the Drenari didn't answer. Her hands remained folded in her lap. Her face unreadable, a perfect mask behind translucent lenses. I suspected, she said calmly. Not that ship, perhaps, but something equally unpleasant. Brev was pacing, his earlier smugness now shredded. It dwarfed the planetary defense grid. It blocked the sun. There was no escort vessel. That was a declaration of intent. You misunderstand them, Rael replied. This wasn't the intent, this was restraint. A moment of stunned silence. They're Deathworlders, she continued, voice soft like drifting ash. You laughed at their crude engines. You mocked their chaos, but they've spent centuries learning how to win without elegance. Oros bared his needle teeth. They could have sent a message, filed a motion. There are protocols. They don't trust your protocols, Rael said. They trust what they build with their hands. AVD spike. The room shifts. A hologram blinked into view, unbidden, hacked, Earth tech. The Council's top-level comms cracked like a toy lock. On-screen, UNS Night Warden holding position. Its command deck was flooded with orange emergency lights. A lone figure stood at the helm. Humans. Female. Combat harness. One cybernetic. Eye flickering, she didn't blink. We've issued no demands, we expect none. This isn't diplomacy, this is extraction. Rael tilted her head slightly, watching the flicker of terror ripple through the chamber. She remembered Earth's silence during the Zenthari collapse. How they had observed, calculated, built. This is how they speak, she murmured. With action. Oros leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Why help the Valens? Why now? Rayleigh gave a rare smile. Not kind. They aren't helping, she whispered. They're testing. The word sank like a stone. Aboard the UNS Night Warden, the human commander gave a final order. One simple line spoken with the calm of gods. Drop burn, break the atmosphere. And the ship moved. It didn't fly. It descended, like judgment carved from steel. From the shadows, Rail exhaled slowly. No smugness, just inevitability. They thought help would never come, she said. They were wrong, but help wasn't the right word. Space was quiet, the kind of quiet that usually preceded history breaking in half. Commander Ilara Miles stood at the forward deck, eyes locked on the view ahead. Layers of fire peeling off the hull as Earth's vengeance entered the Valen skies. Atmosphere breached, her helmsman called out. Pressure hull holding, heat shields at 97%. She didn't respond. She was watching the horizon, or what remained of it. Below, the Valen capital smoldered under blockade fire. Xerian battle platforms floated like carrion, birds, their angled hulls bristling with plasma fins and ion lances. They're powering up weapons, came the tactical report. Targeting us. Ilara tilted her head. Good. Let them. The Night Warden didn't slow. It accelerated, AVD spike. Alien POV. On the Xerian platform Korthrex 9, Fleet Commander Veraz clicked in disbelief. The human ship was in direct trajectory. It should have veered, flanked, feinted. That was what sane vessels did. Instead, it was coming straight through their formation. Fire grid now, Veraz roared. All sectors! Shred them! Dozens of lance beams screamed toward the Night Warden, amber light carving the clouds. Ilara didn't blink. The beam struck and bent. The hull of the Night Warden didn't ripple, didn't glow, didn't register impact. The alien lances broke, upon it like waves on obsidian. Back on the command deck, the helmsman choked. They're hitting us with antimatter and we're not even... Ignore it, Ilara said. Focus on the descent vector. The bridge shuddered once as their left railgun armature locked into place, a sound like the world being loaded into a slingshot. Target? The gunner asked. Ilara gave a dry smile. That thing that just fired at us. The railgun fired. The round was tungsten core. Godspeed accelerated. It vaporized Korthrex 9. Mid-sentence, Vraz never finished his curse. Back in orbit, the other Xerian platforms hesitated. A single pause, a delay of thought, and then one by one, they began to move. Away. They're retreating, whispered the Valen ambassador, watching from a broken tower. Down through the clouds came the Night Warden. Its descent left contrails, a fire that seared the sky into memory. Back on the bridge, Ilara finally spoke with weight. We're not here to play by their rules. We're here to teach them what silence builds. She looked at the crew. All veterans. All quiet. And this is just our opening argument. The wind was still choking on fire when the Night Warden landed. Its thrusters didn't whisper. They roared, flattening entire hillsides as the ship's landing struts slammed into Valen soil. Trees bent. The air shimmered. The planet itself seemed to flinch. There were no banners, no anthems, only the hiss of hydraulics and the deep, unsettling clang of the belly doors unlock. Inside, the troops waited in silence. Not clad in polished chrome or ornamental plumes, they wore scarred exoframes. Marked, burned, functional. Each of them had fought on death worlds where storms cut flesh and time itself warped under pressure. The kind of humans who had stopped asking why long ago. Ilara stood at the head of the ramp, arms folded, helmet under one arm. The Valen skies wept acid rain around her, but she didn't flinch. Open it, she said. The ramp dropped with a thundercrack. AVD spike. Alien eyes watched from below. A Xerian sniper team had been stationed on the ridge overlooking the LZ. One of them, younger, violet-plated pulse rifle trembling, whispered into the comms. They're not bringing tanks. What then? The commander snapped. They're walking. There was awe in the voice. Fear. On the ground, the first human stepped out. Massive dark armor, visor glowing faint blue. Behind him, rows of others. They didn't move fast. They didn't need to. Every footstep struck like a warning. They're advancing toward the Valen capital, came the whispered intel from fleeing Xerian scouts. But they're not attacking. Back on the battlefield, Ilara turned to her second-in-command, a tall brute named Roke. Status? No enemy movement. They're still scattering like rats. Roke grunted. No official contact from the council. They won't, Ilara replied. Roke paused. Then why are we here? To remind them. He nodded. No further questions. Behind them, one of the human soldiers paused near a scorched Valen outpost. Inside were civilians, sick, weak, starved. The soldier knelt, removed his helmet, offered rations. No words, just an action. A different kind of strike. Cut to council chamber. Alien panic escalates. We must respond, a voice barked. We can't allow them to intervene unilaterally. Ambassador Rail's voice cut through. They're not asking permission.